It's me, Counterpuncher, the Week Era Grand Slam Trash Talking Ranking Champion. Praise Ekaterina after that racket incident at the French Open and then playing in her next tournament and winning a title. It's like she bottled up that anger and frustration, then it exploded into her winning her second title. Ekaterina stepping her game up. As I said, I'm giving my full support to Ekaterina. She needs the support because of the abundant anti-Russian exclusion discrimination that's going on in the sports world, especially in Europe. But Ekaterina seems like she's adjusting well on tour and is unfazed by the biased hostility towards Russian players. Now that's the display of strong mental strength and fortitude that Ekaterina has. Like I said, Ekaterina, she has to be a strong fighter. It's taking courage for her to be competing on tour, playing through this anti-Russian prejudice hatred. And when Ekaterina was giving her winner's speech, if I was her, as soon as they gave me that microphone, I would have had said it off on that court. I would have had aired it all out about Wimbledon. Like, I just won this tournament, giving me excellent momentum leading into playing at Wimbledon, a tournament that I'm being ostracized from for a war that has nothing to do with me or other Russian players. I'm just a player that happens to be from Russia, that's it. So why am I being ostracized from competing at Wimbledon? You know what, Wimbledon? You can kiss my Russian ass. And it's not just Wimbledon or the tennis world where Russians have to withstand displays of adversarial microaggression blowback from. It's being exhibited by these Ukrainian players as well. Did you see after Ekaterina whooped Dana Yastrzemska's ass in that first round match? Dana, she did not even want to give Ekaterina a handshake at the net. Like, she didn't even want to touch her hand. She tapping rackets with her. I'm like, why you tapping rackets with her for? Like, the players stopped tapping rackets on tour months ago. You see that right there? That shows the lack of maturity by Dana Yastrzemska and the rest of these Ukrainian players on tour. See, these tennis players, these women, they lack maturity and life experience. Tennis is their careers, tennis is their lives. That's the only thing they have going on in their lives is tennis. These women don't have any lives outside of tennis. Tennis is all they know, and it's evident. Instead of looking outward of the tennis world circle, and look at the person who's behind all the chaos, who started the war. Blame them. Point your fingers at him. Run up to him demanding he give you answers. But instead, these Ukrainian players, they are expecting answers from the Russian players. Instead of going to Vladimir Putin and getting him to give them answers. Like I said, the Russian players, they don't have anything to do with the war. But none of these Ukrainian players are seeking out answers from Vladimir himself. None of these Ukrainian players are going to do that because these Ukrainian players are stuck in this tennis world. So they're not going to blame and hold the president of Russia accountable. They're going to blame the people that they are surrounded by most of the time. And that's other players. So the Ukrainians are going to focus all their energy and frustration onto the Russian players. They're going to take all their frustration out on them. So the Russian players are going to receive the brunt of their frustration. I feel like the Russian players are receiving unfair, unjustified treatment, but for the Ukrainian players, it's like guilty by association, right? But we foreseen an impending war for the past 8 years, and no one was taking heed and no one was taking any warning. There was a civil war going on in that country for 8 years. I mean, come on, this is Europe. Isn't it regularly some type of war going on within those Slavic countries? It's like they cannot get along and coexist and border each other without trying to invade and start a war with one another. And if you're American that watches tennis, if you're ignorant, uncultured, and never been anywhere outside the United States, if you hear a tennis player speaking a native language and it sounds like they're speaking Russian, then they're from a Slavic country. And I learned this just by watching tennis. So don't tell me, you an American, have you ever been to Europe? You never been to Europe before, so you don't know anything about European culture. But I know that it's in European culture to start wars within those European countries. War is the very thing that Europe specializes in. You can take a brief glance at European history and see Europeans happily starting revolutions, starting civil wars, invading other European countries. And this is most prominent with both World War I and II being started in Europe. So Europe's history is a history of war. These war-mongering European nations, well, except the French, those cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
Bonjour, you cheese-eating surrender monkeys!
If it wasn't for the United States intervening in World War II, your favorite French player would be speaking German. And the pure embarrassment of European media that's covering the war, acting stunned, mystified that Europe is having yet another huge war, pretending as if Europeans don't start wars anymore. It's been peaceful, that war has not happened in Europe for 75 years, since World War II. But in reality, like I said, Ukraine has been in a civil war with Russia since 2014 that no one was talking about. Not even these Ukrainian tennis players were showing concern for. Just like I said with Dana Yashrimska back in 2020 when she was showing more concern for the political social climate here in the United States with the Black Lives Matter movement, taking off her clothes, whoring herself out for attention for the Black Lives Matter movement. That was the mindset of these Ukrainian players. They wasn't even worried about that civil war over there. None of them was on their social media bringing attention to the civil war over there. Now they all on their social medias crying up a storm. Oh, our country is being invaded. Russia bombed up my home. Now it's looking like a settlement from Fallout 4. That's what it's looking like over there. But yet, none of those Ukrainian players, I follow Lucia Sorenko, none of those Ukrainian players that's crying up a storm on their social media and boo-hooing on newspaper articles did not bring any attention or any awareness to that civil war that's been going on in Ukraine for the past 8 years. And now that your country is being invaded and now the world is supposed to feel sorry for Ukraine, we're supposed to feel bad about that war. Now Ukraine expects the world to stand with Ukraine when Ukraine couldn't even stand up for themselves and let themselves get invaded. I would think Europeans will be desensitized to another big war happening in Europe again. I remember some tennis players telling stories of having to escape wars to play professional women's tennis back in the 1990s. Now fast forward 30 years later, now these Gen Z European players are now telling stories of having to escape wars to play professional women's tennis. Same war experience sentiments spread across 2 generations, 3 decades apart. No matter what country it is in Europe, there's some type of small civil war going on or a large scale war like we seeing now. And this has been the state of Europe for the past 30 years. Because any nation that prides and defines themselves based on armed conflicts such as Europe, then peace would be impossible to achieve. But anyways, back to Ekaterina. And after Ekaterina won that grass title, I was debating whether I was going to watch Wimbledon or not. I'm like, after Ekaterina won this tournament, like, this was my Wimbledon. I'm not even going to watch Wimbledon this year. I'm just going to rewatch Ekaterina's championship run here again. I would probably have more enjoyment rewatching that tournament than watching Wimbledon anyways because Ekaterina's not competing there. Ekaterina, she would be my favorite. I would be anticipating the most to watch at Wimbledon since she just won a title on grass. And she's not even playing there, so there's no reason for me to even watch Wimbledon. So I'm not watching it. So I'm boycotting watching Wimbledon on the behalf of Ekaterina Alexandrova being excluded from participating at Wimbledon, being flat out discriminated against because Wimbledon wants to bring politics into tennis. And if Wimbledon wants to ban players from playing in their tournament because their country has started a war with another country, then England, which is the country where Wimbledon is held, should ban all British players, and then Wimbledon should ban themselves from their own tournament and shut that whole tournament down. Because of centuries of British invasion, colonization, conflicts, and wars started with other nations. But the banning of Russian and Belarusian players from competing at Wimbledon is Wimbledon's way of letting England throw rocks and then hide their hands, like the British had not contributed to Europe's history of endless wars with other countries. Here in America on the 4th of July, we celebrate America beating the crap out of those British and sit their asses sailing back across the Atlantic back to their island, so they can go on and start colonization conflicts with other countries because America, we was not going to let the British colonize here. So Wimbledon, you British strawberry and cream eating bastards, I'm boycotting watching Wimbledon until the Russians and Belarusians can compete at this tournament again. And this has been Counterpuncher, and I'm out!